My husband, Martin, works as a freelancer and earns a low income, so I support our family with my income. Despite this, he leaves all the household chores to me and takes a condescending attitude. One day, Martin said this, starting next week, we'll be living with my sister and her husband, so please clear out one room. What? My brother-in-law is quitting his job, so they have to leave their company housing. That's why I'm inviting them here. I was speechless at his words. I can't stand it when he makes decisions on his own without consulting me. Then you can take care of the $2,800 monthly mortgage. Why? Because we're getting a divorce. What? Martin laughed and said, "What are you talking about? There's no way I, with a monthly income of $800, can pay the mortgage. You'll have to pay for it. My sister is really looking forward to living with Lane. I'm also excited to live with my sister again." I felt angry that Martin was moving the conversation forward on his own. If he likes his sister so much, he can live with her alone. But I will firmly refuse. Watch me, I won't let you do whatever you want anymore. My name is Rachel, and I'm 45 years old. 10 years ago, just before getting married, my engagement was broken off, and I was feeling down. Martin, who was a colleague at the time, comforted me, and that's how we started dating. The following year we got married, and soon after we had our son Lane. I love my job, and after parental leave, I returned to work full-time. If both of us worked, we could save enough for Lane's education and our retirement. That's what I thought. But then Martin was transferred from the parent company to a subsidiary because of a mistake at work. Unhappy with this, he quit the company and chose the path of non-regular employment. His income has been reduced to a quarter of what it once was, but I thought I could make up for that by working more, so I reconsidered my situation positively. My real problem is not Martin's salary but his sister, Margot. Martin's family runs a general goods store in a shopping district, and Margot, busy in place of their parents, has been taking care of Martin. She was effectively a parent to him. Therefore, even after getting married, she still loves Martin more deeply than her own parents, frequently contacts him, exchanges messages, and shows up at our house every 2 weeks without notice. Each time, I am perplexed and annoyed, yet I find it hard to simply send her away. The issue is that recently Margot's attention has shifted from Martin to my son, Lane. Previously, she forcefully showed me a family album she cherishes, and I was surprised to see how much Lane, as a young child, resembles Martin at that age. Margot has been beautiful even at her age of 53, and when she removes her flashy makeup, she looks similar to Martin. Despite her well-kept appearance, she seems inwardly disappointed by Martin's transformation into a middle-aged man with a beard, but she is very pleased because her nephew is increasingly resembling her younger brother as a child. Therefore, when she arrives unannounced and Lane is not home, she is clearly in a bad mood. Lane is still at soccer practice at this time? He's only 9, poor thing, she says, sitting on the sofa in a frilly, lace-adorned dress, her pink lips pouting in dissatisfaction. "It was recommended by a friend, and it's only 6 p.m. I responded. A third grader should be in bed by 8 p.m. That's not possible, he has homework. Kids these days are busier than in the past. Margot has a condition that makes her infertile, and after several years of trying to conceive, it seems she gave up. So I understand she's not familiar with modern parenting, but she frequently interferes otherwise, and she usually visits during dinner time. Her husband is away on business, and she targets our home to have her meals, and almost invariably, she criticizes the cooking. Ah, sweet and sour pork with bean sprouts and ham salad? I would use cucumber and pickled mustard plants, she says. My sister is good at cooking, that's for sure. This is tasty, but it could use a bit more salt. I'll eat it since it's a shame to waste. And on another day, the chicken breast is dry and hard to eat. Really? Is that so? Yes, it's always like this. This meal is like something a kindergartner would make. Martin laughs as he says this. and I feel irritated with him in my heart. I don't want to hear that from someone who has never cooked. If it were me, I'd moisten the chicken with water or wine before cooking it. I've tried that. Then, it must be your cooking skills, Rachel. Hopeless. Margot and Martin burst into laughter together. After finishing the meal, they make unnecessary comments. Rachel, since Martin is letting you eat with him, you should think more about nutrition when you prepare meals, right, Martin? Yeah. Martin, sitting next to me, gives an awkward smile, seemingly embarrassed. You may not know this, sister-in-law, but actually, I'm the one supporting Martin. And when Lane returns, Margot starts making a fuss. Lane, it's been a while. Show your face to Auntie. Ah, you really do look just like your dad when he was young. You'll definitely be handsome in the future. What about becoming an idol? No, I'm going to be a soccer player. Ah, what a waste. Have you grown taller? Your skin is smooth, your eyelashes long, and your hair silky. Very nice. Margot keeps touching Lane's face and hair, and Lane, with a forced smile, looks at me, unable to hide his discomfort, seeking help. I was washing dishes, but I wiped my hands and rushed over to pull Lane away from Margot. Please stop, sister-in-law. Lane is uncomfortable. It was just a little touch. That should be okay, right, Martin? Yeah, let her touch him a little. She doesn't have kids of her own, after all. Martin casually remarked while fiddling with his smartphone on the sofa. My heart is filled with irritation. Lane is not a toy. I think he's cute too, but I wouldn't force myself on him. That's separate from this. Please stop, as he clearly doesn't like it. Lane, you don't really mind, do you? When you put it that way, he can't say no. Sister-in-law, if you don't change your behavior, we won't be able to let you see him. You're stingy. Fine, from now on, I'll just look. Margot reluctantly agreed, and I breathed a sigh of relief. However, our home's troubles didn't end there. The other day, unexpected overtime came up, so I called Martin during my lunch break. Sorry, please eat the leftovers in the fridge with Lane. Okay, got it. But when I got home, Lane immediately ran up to me. Mommy, I'm so hungry. What? Haven't you eaten yet? Confused, I was met with complaints from Martin, who was lounging on the sofa. There's no food. What about the frozen rice and the ready meals? I don't want to eat unless it's freshly cooked. He said that arrogantly, clicking his tongue at the meat and potatoes I had prepared. I don't want to eat leftovers from yesterday. I'm going to buy a hamburger. Then he grumbled at me unhappily. If you can't prepare a meal, don't work overtime. Sometimes you could cook too, Martin. He responded with displeasure. Housework is a woman's job, but your cooking is a disaster anyway. Have you forgotten? I picked you up when you were looking so unattractive. I felt pity because no one else would have married you. Martin looked at me with a malicious smile. You could never be grateful enough to me, could you? I was angry but held back my response because Lane was nearby. It's always the same. Whenever we argue, he claims he has saved me as if he's done me a favor. Indeed, Martin did rescue me from a terrible situation. However, now he is just a part-timer with a minimal income, relying on my salary, dumping all the housework on me, and acting arrogantly. Will I continue to be looked down upon like this? That night, as I watched Lane's innocent face while he slept, I pondered deeply. A home where the father belittles the mother is not good for the child. Should I consider a divorce? But I worry that Lane is attached to Martin because I am busy. That's why I hesitate to take his father away from him. Then one day, after Lane had gone to bed, Martin suddenly spoke up. Starting next week, we'll be living with my sister and her husband, so please clear out one room. What? Stunned, I stared at him as he continued. Not what, just make sure it's done. I haven't heard about this. That's why I'm telling you now. Martin was somewhat irritated as he said that. My brother-in-law has to quit his job and leave their company housing. That's why I'm inviting them here. I told them they could stay as long as they like. I was shocked. What was he thinking? Proceeding with things without my permission. I forced a smile and said to Martin, "Then you can take care of the monthly mortgage of $2,800. Why? I'm getting a divorce. I've already been discussing it with a lawyer." What? After a slight delay, Martin burst out laughing. "What are you talking about? There's no way I, with a monthly income of $800, can pay the mortgage. You have to pay for it." He said it as if it were the most natural thing in the world. Grinning, Martin continued, "My sister is really looking forward to living with Lane. I'm also excited to live with her again." I see. I felt angry as Martin unilaterally moved the conversation forward. Enough was enough. If he loves his sister so much, he can live with her alone, but I will firmly refuse. Watch me, I won't let you do as you please anymore. The next day, I took a few days of paid leave and started packing secretly while Martin was at work. I contacted my parents and discussed whether I could temporarily take refuge at their home, revealing Margot's excessive attachment to Lane, which angered them more than me. Is she treating our precious grandson like a pet? She really is a creepy person. We can't leave you in that situation. Come back home. Thank you. And sorry for the sudden news. When I decided to divorce and told Lane, he asked anxiously, "Can I go with you, Mom?" "Of course, honey. We'll be staying at grandparents' house for a while." I'm happy. I love Grandma and Grandpa. After hesitating for a moment, I asked Lane, "We might not see Daddy much from now on. Is that okay?" "It's okay. Daddy doesn't play with me anyway. And when I talk about school, he just answers without really listening, so it's not fun." "Really? Is that how it has been?" Surprised by my response, Lane continued to express his dissatisfaction. Even when he took me to the park, he would just sit on a bench and play with his smartphone. I wanted to play catch, but he would always say, "I'm busy. Play by yourself." I was envious of other dads. I didn't know that. While Martin did take Lane to the park on holidays, it allowed me to finish chores and shopping, and I thought they were enjoying their time together since he took outdoor toys with them. If he's not fulfilling his role as a father either, then there's no reason to stay with Martin. Fortunately, my parents live in a nearby town, so Lane can continue attending the same school and go to his soccer classes, which is a relief. I moved to my parents' house, transferred the house title to Martin, updated the address, and picked up the necessary divorce papers from the local office. The divorce process involves not only signatures but also the division of shared assets. We'll need to determine the house's sale price and split the amount left after paying off the mortgage evenly between Martin and myself. Furthermore, we need to discuss and decide on the amount of child support for Lane. A lawyer familiar with divorce, who was a friend of my father, would meet with me on my day off for consultation. After moving out, one day while heading home from work, I was shocked to see an unbelievable number of missed calls and messages on my phone in just a few hours. The voicemail left by Martin was pitiful. "Rachel, the bill for the house mortgage of $2,800 came. Didn't I say I can't pay it?" Sighing, I drove toward the house. Although he sounded almost tearful on the phone, Martin was as arrogant as ever when I met him. "Hey, why is the house mortgage billed to me? Isn't this house in your name?" Before I could even sit down on the sofa, he started yelling, "Yes, it's in my name. But you decided on your own to let your sister and her husband live here." "Of course. This house is mine too. What's wrong with living with family? We should help each other in times of need. Then I'll call my parents to come live here next week. They are getting old, and I'm worried about them." "That's okay, right?" Martin's eyes widened in anger. "What are you talking about? That's impossible. I absolutely won't allow your parents to live with us. See, Martin? You react the same way I do. Martin looked displeased by my words. Even so, to want a divorce for that reason, isn't that too arbitrary? We have a child. You'd be taking his father away from him. I've endured a lot too, and I've thought carefully about Lane. But I can no longer tolerate your arbitrary attitude, I responded in a calm voice. Anyway, I've already left the house. So transferring the house into your name is the natural next step. You left without my permission, isn't that crazy? I'll forgive you now, so come back quickly with Lane. Without permission? The irony almost made me laugh. After a silence, Martin lowered his voice. Hey, aren't you misunderstanding something? What? Nobody told you to leave. Suddenly showing a sweet smile, Martin softened his tone. My sister didn't mean to drive you out. So come back, do the household chores, and contribute financially to the house like before. 2 more people won't make much difference. We have spare rooms, after all. The house does have spare rooms, that's true, right? It's only sensible to use them effectively. But the mortgage of $2,800 is a bit too high, isn't it? Watching Martin shrug, I replied with a mixture of astonishment and annoyance. That high mortgage was your doing. What? Is it my fault? I said a prefabricated house with a garden would have been enough. You were the one persuaded by the builder's staff to go for a luxurious specification. Martin frowned, and I responded coldly. You were the one who wanted to build a 5-bedroom house 5 minutes walk from the station, with a rooftop, a large garden, and a basement. And you wanted to use expensive materials from abroad for the wallpaper and flooring. It's only natural that the mortgage would be high with all those specifications. Sure, but, I had to do that much to brag to my colleagues and subordinates. Martin spoke with an air of arrogance, as if it were the most natural thing. I was able to take out that loan because I was a chief at a major company. Yes, that's true. But within less than 2 years you were transferred to a subsidiary, and then you became a freelancer. When your salary decreased, I had to switch from part-time to full-time to pay for that house's mortgage. Family supports each other, that's normal. Without showing any gratitude, Martin haughtily retorted. So, letting my sister and her husband live with us is also normal, and yet you're against it. You really are a cold person. My anger peaked, and I raised my voice. So, when is your brother-in-law planning to find a job? And your sister is going to start working too, right? How am I supposed to ask them that? I should just take care of them forever. Martin replied casually. Obviously, you should provide all the money for the house. As a housewife, you should be able to manage that much. Think of it as returning the favor for everything my sister has done for me. Feeling dizzy, I pressed my forehead and closed my eyes. You might have been taken care of by her, but to me she was just being snide. She's always been so fond of Lane, that's strange. Martin laughed mockingly. When you're at work and Lane feels lonely, my sister comes to see him. How about we make Lane her adopted son? Then we'd truly be family. I couldn't believe my ears. Are you serious? Why not? You'll still be mom and my sister will be mama even if he's adopted. We'd still live in the same house. Nothing changes. Lane would be happy. He could brag about having a beautiful mama. Martin smirked, stood up, and commanded loudly. So bring Lane back. If you want a divorce, leave Lane here. You'll have to send child support, house mortgage, and our living expenses to my account every month. That's the minimum condition. Do you think I would ever agree to that? If you can't do that, I won't consent to the divorce. Martin asserted, and I laughed lightly in response. Yes, I understand. Feeling that further conversation would be futile, I left the house. If Martin intended to act that way, I had my own plans. A few days later, while I was preparing dinner at my parents' house, my phone rang. It was Martin, yelling in a tearful voice. "Hey, what have you been telling my sister? She's treating me like a liar now. How are you going to fix this?" She seemed unaware of the reality, so I just shared the facts. I answered calmly. Martin is no longer with a big corporation, he's a freelancer now. I've been covering the living expenses with my salary. And that wonderful house's mortgage? I've been paying for it for over 5 years. She didn't believe me at first, so it's good that I recorded our conversation yesterday. She was quite shocked when she heard it. Don't do such sneaky things. You're just jealous because my sister and I get along so well. What? Are you kidding me? I raised my voice unintentionally. If you love your sister so much, why don't you work and support her yourself? Fueled by anger, I hung up the phone and immediately blocked Martin's number. After informing my lawyer about Martin's situation, I received the advice, let's discuss this properly in court. Doubting whether Martin even had the means to fulfill his demands, I was interrupted by a call from Lane's school during my work lunch break. Worried about what it might be about, I answered the phone. I apologize for interrupting your busy day, but do you know a woman named Margot Parker? I was a bit startled by the sudden question. Yes, that's my husband's sister. I see. Is there something wrong with my sister-in-law? The teacher's words were a bit hesitant. Actually, she was just taken away by the police from the school premises. Really, I nearly dropped the coffee I was holding. The teacher carefully explained the details. A woman crossed the school gate illegally, entered the campus, and approached Lane while he was moving between classrooms. She persistently talked to him and even grabbed his hand, which led his friends to report it to me in the staff room, saying that an unknown woman was clinging to Lane. I see. She claimed to be his aunt, but Lane denied knowing her, so we decided to call the police. I could imagine Margot in a state of confusion. She argued that Lane's mother won't let me see him, and I've been locked out when I tried to visit their home, so I had no choice but to come to the school. I haven't done anything wrong. It's the monopolizing mother who is at fault. She was sent home after the police finished questioning her. I remembered an incident when Margot had tried to catch Lane returning home and my father had turned her away. I apologize for the inconvenience. I'm truly sorry. I apologized over the phone. Was Lane upset? More than being upset, he was angry. He said, "That woman is creepy. I don't want to see her ever again." I understand. I planned to reassure Lane when I got home. I would promise him that he would never have to meet Margot again, so he shouldn't worry. After hanging up the phone, I took a sip of my coffee and breathed a sigh of relief. Margot must have been quite shocked to be called a stranger by Lane. I smirked coldly to myself, thinking it was the result of her own actions. Martin had been reluctant about the divorce, but was persuaded by the lawyer I hired, who argued that prolonging the trial would be costly, and he reluctantly agreed. He also accepted the amount I suggested for child support. Then, we needed to determine the sale price of our shared property, the house, and split the amount after deducting the remaining mortgage between Martin and myself. When Martin got an estimate from a real estate agent and told Margot about selling the house, she was furious. I was told I could take care of things and spend a lot of time with Lane at home, but this changes everything. You expect me to rent an apartment? I don't have that kind of money. I don't have any money either. So sorry, but you'll need to find a place to borrow from and move out. I believed you when you said you were a chief at a top company. but to find out you're just a freelancer. Martin, I'm really disappointed. It's really your fault, who embezzled company funds and got fired. You and Margot should clean up their own mess. What a thing to say. After a heated argument, Martin and his sister and her husband each moved into separate apartments. Martin had to sell the house and settle the mortgage, and he still needed to make monthly child support payments to me. To manage this, he increased his part-time jobs to 5 and is working all day long to scrape together enough for living expenses and child support. I took measures to garnish his wages directly if the child support payments failed to reach my account, adding to the pressure he must feel. Margot and her husband, who moved into an apartment using borrowed money for the moving expenses and initial living costs, found new jobs. However, Margot encountered the mother of one of Lane's classmates at her new workplace, and word of her school intrusion spread quickly. This led to Margot quitting her job soon after, becoming suspicious and wary in her personal interactions, and she now mostly confines herself at home. Recently, neighbors who have seen Margot commented that she looks disheveled and much older than her actual age. Since the divorce proceedings have concluded, I have moved to an apartment near my parents' home with Lane. When sudden overtime or weekend work arises, my parents take care of Lane. Lane has always been fond of his grandparents, and they adore him, so I can trust them completely. I am freed from the worries of Margot suddenly visiting or seeing Martin sloppily lying on the sofa while I do the chores, and the new life feels refreshing. I am open to Lane meeting with Martin whenever he wishes, but Lane has grown disenchanted with Martin and shows no interest in seeing him, so it is uncertain when this might happen. With the absence of his father, my parents and I pour our love into Lane, dedicated to supporting his growth.